Good morning, everybody. Just want to add a couple of thoughts on the small group things that are coming up. That's going to be October 29th here in the multipurpose room. So the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a few people. We have to give them, of course, an opportunity to prepare. We're going to have a couple of testimonies over the next couple of weeks. Our small groups are direct. We see it as a direct opportunity for how we're going to work out how we are wildly loving our church, Jesus Christ, and our community. And we're just saying to you, this is another opportunity for you to plug in to these small groups. So you want to know where we're going with it. We're going to be going over something called The Story. It's going to be a 31-week type course that we can unplug or plug back in if we need to do other things. So we're just excited to give you an opportunity. If you missed out in the last time that we had an opportunity for you to join in, this is another chance for you to come and be a part and see what's happening, where we're going, and we're just going to have a little time of prayer and worship, and we'll show you what the curriculum is going to look like and just kind of expand a little bit more on the visions. That'll be October 29th, 7 o'clock in the multipurpose room. So those details are probably in your bulletin, but I just wanted to make sure no one showed up tomorrow. That would be bad. Anyhow, one of the most important things that we need to deal with in life is failure. Because failure is such an absolute, important, integral part of moving forward. You know, this little guy here, he's leaving failure and heading to success, but he didn't get to success without first passing through a season or a time of failure. I like what it says, now leaving failure, come back often. See, failure doesn't mean the end of the road. It's kind of a learning experience. And failure, I remember when I was reading through Acts chapter 15, that's kind of on the front of your bulletin, it's the story of Paul and Barnabas. And just prior to this passage in Acts chapter 15, they have just experienced one of the most incredible turning points in early Christianhood, because at the very first, there was a big debate over what did it take to be saved? What are we going to do with these Gentiles who are not Jewish, who want to worship Yahweh? What are we going to do with them? What is the requirement from God? And so there was a large amount of people that are saying, well, you've got to do all these things. They've got to keep the law. And that was going to be burdensome. And so there's this major debate that took place. Paul had to correct Peter in the book of Ephesians, and they all kind of got together. And then at the end of the day, this marvelous decision was made that for the Gentiles, we do not have to come under the law, and that we were continued to be free under grace. And it was a marvelous, incredible victory, life-changing for the church. And then a few short weeks, days, we're not sure how long, this little passage came about. Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them. See, Paul and Barnabas have been missionary buddies, kind of like Laura and Ruth that were here last week. And they've gone around the Mediterranean. They were reaching people for Christ, starting churches. And in fact, Barnabas is the one who went and got Paul. Paul had gone into obscurity for 10 or 13 years and was just in a small church. And he was reaching out to Asia Minor. And Barnabas went and got him. And then Paul kind of rose to the top. But then after this major victory, well, it says in verse 38, Paul didn't think it was wise to take John Mark because he deserted them in Pamphylia and did not continue with them in the work. And in verse 39, they had such sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus. Even the best, even the apostles, even those who are wise and mature in Christ, you know what? They fail sometimes. And I can remember looking at this passage and thinking, Paul, you jerk. Where's the love? And I actually end up with an attitude against Paul for a long time until one of my New Testament teachers in div school pointed out to me, Paul didn't stay there, Paul grew. Paul matured. The Apostle Paul, the great Apostle Paul, he grew. But first, he had some failures. But we'll get back to the story a little bit later. We as a church have decided on a path. We feel God is leading us into what I call the three wildlies. while giving God the love he deserves, wildly loving Jesus, while loving our church family, wildly loving our community. And so this wild love, you know what? We're going to be tested on that. If we want to be wild lovers, you know what's going to happen? God's going to pull back our life and show us, where are we failing in loving people? I'm not saying we're bad lovers. I think we're actually pretty good. But I think if that's going to be our whole DNA, if that's who we're going to be, then God is going to take us into deeper levels of love. He's going to test us. Maybe there's people in your life that are really, oh man. Christ says to us that, what does it matter if you love someone you like? You know, it's not hard for me to love Ed, right? I mean, he's always doing stuff for me. But what about people who you don't know, or people that you don't know well, or people that you find yourself with different opinions on? How are you going to love them? You know, there's a reward for us as we learn to genuinely love those who maybe just kind of grate the wrong way, you know, there's people that you're not, you know, God has designed us all a little bit differently, and some of us don't fit together well. That's okay. But if God is going to call us to be a loving church, we don't get to pick and choose who we love. If we are going to be a church that wildly loves, then we are going to fail some of these tests on our way to becoming, in my mind's eye, the most loving church the Maritimes have ever seen. And we're going to fail before we get there, but that does not mean we're going to not try. So God is going to send us tests. So we want to be a loving test? What are we going to do when we fail? Are we going to be like Calvin here from Calvin Hobbes, trip and fall? Ta-da! If God is in control of these tests, then he knows what he needs to do to help us to get where we need to be. You know, there's no testimony without a test, right? Deuteronomy 8:2 and 2 Chronicles 32:31 are up on the screen. They both tell us that God sends us tests so that what is in the depths of our heart will come to the forefront. So when you fail, it's one of the most important things that can happen to you, because it gives you a reality check. And and it begins with leadership and it goes down. So, God's been taking my heart and ripping it open and saying, you want to be a wild lover, do you? Do you? Well, then wildly love this person and that person and this person and that situation and over here and, oh, really? Yeah, really. Sometimes it begins as an act of the will. But I have found that as I apply my will to loving, that I become a better lover, and it becomes genuine, it becomes deep, and I become compassionate. As he shows me where I don't want to love, he teaches me how to love even better. If you want, actually we'll start with this. You ever heard of this guy here on the next slide? You seen this guy? Everybody ever watch basketball? Just watch Space Jam, Michael Jordan. Says here, though he earned a place in the Hall of Fame and perhaps the most iconic basketball success story in history, Michael Jordan, that is debatable. I know there's some basketball freaks here. Zach would correct me and probably say it's one of the Golden State Warriors or something, but regardless, Michael Jordan knows what it means to lose. He said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. That is why I succeed. Do you know what failure does for you? It's like this. How do you know if you're in shape? How do you know if you're in shape? You do what this next slide does. You go for a jog. if you feel like this guy, minus the Skittles maybe, because that might make you smile, and you know you're not out of shape, the minute you go outside to try and jog, you are going to fail if you have not got a lifestyle of jogging, even though you know you probably should, speaking to myself, get out there and jog. If I go out there and jog, probably from the front end of the church to the side of the church, I'll look like this guy, except my bag of Skittles might be bigger. The moment you fail is the exact moment your eyes are open to the reality of where you are. It is one of the most clarifying, sometimes disappointing and frustrating, but if you can get a hold of it, when you fail, when you mess up, it tells you exactly where you are. It just gets rid of all the other junk. And it just peels it right down to, this is who you really are. This is where you're at. But then you determine that's not where you're going to stay. Failure is of the utmost importance to us in any endeavor. If we are going to become wild lovers, it means we're going to fail at loving sometimes. If we're going to beat something in our life that we just don't have the strength, we're going to fail. But we're going to know exactly where we are, and we're going to know exactly, we'll have a clearer picture of what we need to do to get there. I can still remember there was a time I was working on Graham and Ann as a youth pastor, and at the time they had 2 gas stations on the island, one at one end and one at the other end. And we just finished a youth event, and I was driving kids home, and I'm looking at my gas gauge, and I'd done things in my car I wasn't supposed to do. Some people call them donuts, some call them cookies, and I set the little ball that measures how much gas is in the tank in the wrong place, and it wouldn't come down. So my gas gauge wasn't working quite right. So I had to go by kilometers, because I knew I could get about 400 kilometers on a tank of gas, but I forgot how many kilometers I had left. And I thought I had enough, but I wasn't really sure. But I took the risk, and I went to the long end of the island to drop the kids off. And on my way back home, you know what happened? There's the youth pastor on the side of the road, his fancy Camaro with no gas. I knew exactly where I was. I knew exactly what I needed to get to where I needed to go. I needed to get some fuel, right? I needed to get some fuel. And I didn't have the strength in my body to push the Camaro. It's a big car, right? Didn't have the strength to steer and push at the same time. And so I had to go to a neighbor and just kind of sheepishly say, don't have any gas, do you? Swallow my pride, get a little help. And then I got gas in my car, and I learned. What did I learn? If I don't remember how many kilometers left, go fill the tank. Write it down or something. I didn't make that mistake again. I don't believe I've run out of gas since. But sometimes when we're getting I think I've got a fear now. We get little, maybe we should get some gas. We should fill it up. But paranoid. But I learned some things, right? If we go to Hebrews 12:1b, there's things we need to throw off that are hindering us. Our sin, whatever it is that's holding you back from moving forward. Maybe you're out of gas emotionally, spiritually, physically. How do you fill your tank? Part of it is getting rid of the baggage that's holding you down, because there is a race that you have to run with perseverance. It takes energy, it takes time, it takes strength. If there's a test, you know what happens in high school? If you fail a test and you fail a course, and it's something like math or English, you can't graduate until you get that done. So what happens? The test keeps coming around. Certain subjects none of us like, right? Or some of us love, but others hate. It's when we have a test that comes around, if we keep failing it, it's because God's trying to bring something up to us. there's a weakness. There's an area that, we can't move forward until we deal with this area. It takes some practicing. You see, testing is empowering. It's earning of trust. And when we survive the trial and we push through, sometimes it's like when you wake up really early in the morning, like poor Emily, she had to get up to work at 6 o'clock, she had to be at work, something like that. Anyway, she got up really early. I don't even know what time she got up at. It was really dark. But when you get up in the morning and you got to go somewhere, and it's just like that kind of painfulness, and you're walking, I just don't want to go. Sometimes that's what it feels like. It's very uncomfortable to push through. But when you finally push through, it feels good. Like Stuart and Jake go to the gym 5 o'clock in the morning. He's like, you guys are crazy. He wouldn't be like that first guy. I'd be like the first guy. He'd be like running circles around me. But we have this opportunity to be empowered when a test comes, when a failure comes, to know where we are. It just clarifies things. And then we can strengthen ourselves and move forward. 2 Corinthians 1:4 talks about the purposes for why we go through these things. And more often than not, it's that we can identify with others. Where our hearts often are not broken for something until we've gone through it. I can remember in the 80s, man, divorce was a bad word. And there was so much shame, and pastors were shaming people. And you know what changed? The pastor's kids end up getting divorced. Oh, that changed the tone a bit. It's like, I'll just come off my high horse now, and maybe you guys can help me patch up. What was it like going through that? Can you help me? How do I help my kids? Or how do I change the tone? We don't always have compassion until we've been hurt in an arena. And once we've gone through it, we can offer that help and love to other people. We'll go to slide 10, to 1 Samuel 23:16. King David, we know him as a very spiritual man. Oh, sorry, did I put that in slide 10? Do we have 1 Samuel 23:16? I may have put the wrong number in there. Oh, no, that's the right one. Never mind. Oh, there it is. Look at that. So King David starts off, I'm messing with my tech team. I'm all over the place. The thing is, we don't always know how to strengthen ourselves, right? So they have the 1 Corinthians passage, and you get this passage from David. David has been running from King Saul, and apparently Saul cannot find him, but everybody knows where David is, including Saul's son, Jonathan. And David is weary. He's wondering, am I betraying my king? Am I betraying my people? What am I? He's just an absolute mess. And then I love the fact that Jonathan went to David and helped him to find strength in God. We need each other. We need each other to come alongside, because sometimes we don't have it in us to get the strength to move forward. We need someone to come alongside and say, listen, I've been through this. I'm going to walk with you one step at a time, one day at a time. And then we go to 1 Samuel 30, 7 chapters later, David's in another mess. But it says here in bold, David strengthened himself in the Lord, his God. And David inquired of the Lord. He learned from his experience. This is the point where his family, his wives and his children, and all his soldiers' wives and children had been abducted, and they were getting ready to kill David. And instead of just floundering and saying, kill me, I deserve it, he said, I'm going to strengthen myself in God. He had learned from Jonathan how to face adversity. Paul, at one point, I think he failed the love test. It's just like shooting a bow and arrow, right? Have you ever shot a bow and arrow? There's a lot to it. There's angles, winds, how you hold it. I love sometimes when you see on Hollywood, they're shooting an arrow like this. It's like, I don't even know how you hit a target like that. But Paul failed the love test early on, but you go to 2 Timothy 4:11, and there's a lot of people that have abandoned Paul. This is near the end of the writings of Paul. This is one of his last books that he wrote. And he says, only Luke is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you because he is helpful to me in my ministry. Somewhere between Acts and 2 Timothy, Paul passed the love test. We don't know what happened exactly, but we do know that Paul matured. He passed that test. I assume that with Mark and he being friendly, that he and Barnabas made up as well. And it's so important to work at those kinds of things. Get Mark. Bring him with you because he's helpful to me in my ministry. So when you find yourself going through tests and you find yourself unable to pass, don't beat yourself up. And you find when you come to me, if you ever need a pastor time, whatever, you don't have to hide anything. Let's just do a reality check. Where are you for real? Because when we know where you are for real, when I know where you are for real, we can go to Scripture, we can go to God, and we can help, the family of God can help and can strengthen you and help you to move to where you know God is leading you to be. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8 to 11, it says this just before I pray and then enter into our communion aspect of our service. It says this, we do not want you to be uninformed. Okay, so teach us. What are you saying, Paul? Don't you be uninformed about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We're under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure. You ever felt that? So that we despaired. You get that? The Apostle Paul despaired. So, if you despair, doesn't mean you're not a Christian, doesn't mean you're not a good Christian. It means that you're human. We despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we'd received the sentence of death. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. The faithfulness of God to deliver. On him we have set our hope that he will continue to deliver us. We're talking today about forgiveness and some other conversations, and it's a daily walking out. We need to be continually delivered from some things. Some things it's a fight. And I like what it says in verse 11. It says, on him we have set our hope that he will continue to deliver us, as you help us by your prayers. Your prayers. Then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in answer to the prayers of many.